What if you took the fear out of your philanthropy? What I want to talk to you about today is the psychology of giving and digging underneath the surface and trying to understand more about where you and other donors come from psychologically when you are setting out to change the world, to make a difference, to do your part, to give back better. And, it's no secret there's been a lot of critique of philanthropy, particularly in the last few years. Rob Reich came out with a book in 2018, and Decolonizing Wealth by Edgar Villanueva is a really powerful perspective and critique of philanthropy that both looks at what's gone wrong, but also takes a step back to try to understand how we could heal and approach money and philanthropy in a fundamentally different way. And most recently, Anand Giridharadas has come out with a book that's really made the circuit. And if you haven't heard about these books, you may not have been paying much attention in the last few years, because there's been no shortage of critique about all of the things that have gone wrong with philanthropy. And let's be honest, the world is on fire. And a lot of times it seems like philanthropy can barely get out of bed in the morning, that the response both to urgent crises and to long-term deeply entrenched systemic problems is just lacking. It's just not living up to what we need from philanthropy. And some people have gone as far to say, we ought to do away with the charitable tax deduction. We should just move in a different direction. And I'm not one of those people. I really actually believe that philanthropy done well, done differently, forward-thinking philanthropy has a fundamental and unique role to play in solving some of our most complex social challenges. But a lot of these critiques have real validity. And if we want philanthropy to operate differently, we actually have to peel this back and understand a little bit more about what it is that's going on in our own minds when we as donors approach a challenge and try to help. So I want to propose here a framework for thinking about 4 types of philanthropy. And one way we're going to categorize this is around social impact. What kind of difference is the giving actually making out in the world? And the other is around the inner state of the donor. What level of fulfillment is the donor getting from making the gift? And to fill out this matrix, we're going to need to actually look at a model of psychology. And this is a model that I use a lot in our coaching practice with philanthropists and with social entrepreneurs. It's really a way of understanding human psychology in terms of human needs. Go back to Abraham Maslow, Alfred Adler, and more recently, actually, even Tony Robbins and Chloe Medanis with their 6 human needs framework. There's been some great framing of our psychology in terms of human needs and the innate drives that are at the center of our psychology. So I won't get into this. I've done other videos that kind of walk through this model. But suffice it to say that at the center of this model, in between our system 1 fight or flight brain and our system 2 higher faculties, are these innate human drives. We all have the same drives, but how we meet them, there's infinite variety in how we meet these needs. So what happens if philanthropists put their egocentric, fear-based needs first? These are the needs here around security, novelty, social status, and social connection. Security, do I feel safe? Novelty, do I feel excited and entertained? Social status, do I feel like I matter to myself and to other people? Social connection, do I feel connected to others? Those are what you might call our basic human needs. And we all find a way to meet those needs one way or another, for good or ill. But the question to ask now is, what if you are using your philanthropy as a major vehicle for meeting these egocentric, fear-based needs? Well, we're going to look at that when we fill out those cells of the quadrant. And what if, on the other hand, philanthropists put their higher level self-actualizing drives first when it comes to doing their philanthropy? What if that's the motivation that's driving them in their philanthropy? So here we're talking about these joyful self-actualizing drives, the drive for contributing, social contribution, self-evolution, and self-transcendence. So social contribution, does this truly help others? That's the question you're asking yourself when you're trying to meet that need. Self-evolution, what makes me tick? How do I understand myself? And how do I grow to my highest and best self? And then self-transcendence. This is where you get up on that mountaintop and can see the systems that you are a part of. You're asking, what larger systems am I part of? What bigger whole is seeking expression through me? So let's take a look. Let's hold this idea of human needs psychology in our minds and peel back the onion on different ways that these motivations can show up when it comes to your giving. So first off, if we have a situation where a donor is experiencing lots of satisfaction and fulfillment, they're feeling good about their giving, but their social impact is low, we can think of that as self-centered giving, meaning that it's meeting the needs of the donor psychologically, but it's not actually helping out in the world. So you could think of this as giving to gratify your egocentric needs: security, status, social connection, entertainment, and excitement. And unfortunately, there's a lot of this out in the world, and a lot of examples of this get highlighted in the critiques of philanthropy. Some of it is fairly flagrant, like maybe we've heard about examples of people giving to a private high school and getting a building named after them, and in the process ensuring that their children are very likely to be admitted to that institution. You could think about how that type of philanthropy is going to meet a lot of these needs for security, status, social connection. Maybe you get tickets to the football games too, throw in the entertainment piece. So again, I am not here to criticize people who are making gifts, but I want to be clear that a big reason that philanthropy is being judged harshly is that when there is not social value. So it's not a problem necessarily to meet your own needs in your giving. But if that's really primarily what you're doing and you're not contributing to social impact in a meaningful way, that is legitimately the subject of critique. So it's worth asking yourself when you're doing your giving, am I using this to meet these needs of my own? And am I actually having an impact on something that matters in a significant way out in the world? So what about the next type? We could call this senseless giving, where the donor is not getting any satisfaction really, and we're not seeing any real social impact. And, this is giving that's just not doing much good to anybody. It's giving to discharge social obligations. You asked me to your charity event, so I'll invite you to mine. It's benign neglect. Like, I will only give to people who can get to me, who can figure out how to make an ask. Or, if maybe you're not a high level donor, but you're just giving to whoever happens to send you direct mail. So again, there's nothing wrong with that type of giving necessarily, and it might be doing some good in the world. But if you're not being intentional, chances are you're not maximizing the impact of your giving. And then the worst part, or the worst kind of senseless giving, is not giving at all. And again, this is a huge phenomenon now with people putting billions of dollars in donor-advised funds and parking it there. So they get the benefit of the charitable tax deduction, but there's no obligation to actually give the money away out of the donor-advised fund. And you can even, in some cases, pass those donor-advised funds on to your heirs without ever making a distribution. And so it is truly senseless when the world is on fire to have all of that money that is intended for charitable giving sitting on the sidelines and not making an impact. So again, worth asking yourself, what parts of my giving am I not really paying attention to? And, for some folks, giving seems like a chore. It's just, if you're a wealth creator, you're out there driving hard, building your business, whatever is generating the wealth, that may be your primary focus. But you want to check yourself and say, is it possible that I'm engaged in senseless giving by not giving at all or just giving out of social obligation? Next, we have spiritless giving. And this one is kind of an interesting category. This is what happens when you are giving that's driving for impact, but you're doing it in a mechanical, non-relational, low-trust way. So, for example, you have in mind a certain objective. And you as a philanthropist, a funder, it's almost like you put an RFP out in the world and you say, I want to accomplish X. This is the change I want to make in the world. Who's with me? Who wants to do this? But because of the way you approach it, you don't really have trust that folks are going to, that your grantees are actually going to have impact unless you measure every little thing that they do, and you establish rigid grant agreements with metrics and milestones along the way. And, in this metaphor, it's worth remembering that milestones, you could think of like back when the Romans were building roads, where did we get milestones from? It's the idea that this road goes from this place to that place. We know exactly where the road is going. We have that predetermined destination, and the mile markers are laid out along the road. Well, how much philanthropy that's really making a difference on our most challenging issues has such a clear path forward? Chances are it doesn't. But if you as a funder insist, because you don't necessarily trust or you don't have proximity to your grantees, on measuring every little step along the way, how well is that actually going to go? How much impact are you really going to have? And so the risk of spiritless giving is that you actually start to lose impact because of the way you're approaching it. And it treats grantees like the hired help. I've worked with social entrepreneurs, and some of them really come to a place of feeling like they are playing a part in someone else's story. Even though they are entrepreneurs, they created an organization that's doing amazing work in the world. It's almost like philanthropists are issuing a casting call and trying to fit them into little boxes and then measure every little thing they do. So that's the bad news. Those are 3 ways in which philanthropy can really get off track. But there is a better way. There is a different way. And this is what you might call sense-making giving. Giving that makes sense. And this is giving that creates meaning and maximizes impact through expanded self-awareness and awareness of the systems that are around you, the larger systems that are around you. So that may sound kind of abstract, but what we're really talking about here is another way to get at it is a different metaphor. So if spiritless giving is like the RFP and the metrics and milestones, we're going from A to B, and this is exactly how we're going to do it. What about giving as an expedition of discovery, as a true partnership between grantees and you as a giver, where you may both have in mind there's some place off in the landscape, some mountaintop that you want to get to, but neither one of you actually knows right now exactly how you're going to get there. And so because you trust each other, you're willing to play your role in backing the expedition and getting reports back as new discoveries are made, adjustments need to be made. You're willing to provide more resources. And on the flip side, you also expect that your grantees are going to level with you. They're going to tell you what difficulties they're really encountering. And if they reach some path that is a cliff face they can't get up, that they'll tell you that, and you guys can figure it out together. So that's the metaphor behind this kind of giving, that you are making meaning together in partnership, true partnership with your grantees. And that also means sometimes, in fact, most of the time, you may have an idea about the difference you want to make in the world. And that's great. That's a motivation for you to get out there and give. But you also, in this mode, are listening deeply to the people who are doing the work, to the people who are closest to the problems. And you're letting them not just define the path, but even the destination. Because chances are they, because of their proximity, know things you don't know. They can see things you can't see. And so instead of going in with the solution in mind, the means in mind, and really just trying to hire some people to help you get there, you are backing them and their vision as much as you possibly can. And that's hard because this is taking the fear out of your philanthropy. The fear that, you know what, nothing but my money matters to these grantees. The fear that nobody will ever really level with me. All kinds of fears come up for you as a funder. And, when I coach people and the work that we do advising, it's like fear is the dominant emotion in philanthropy, in so much philanthropy. And it just doesn't have to be that way. But to take the fear out of your philanthropy, it requires you to get better, to, approach the world with humility and courage and a commitment to face yourself and keep growing. And, I'm sounding like I'm lecturing to you, but I'm applying this to myself as well. We have a donor advised fund at Building Impact, and I really try to use this framework in my own giving to try to understand when I'm thinking about making a grant, what needs am I meeting here? And how will I know if this grant is actually having impact? And how will I know if it's fulfilling for me? And, at the end of the day, this is optional. And the reason that this kind of giving, this sense-making giving, is optional. Giving itself is optional. You can engage in senseless giving. You can not give. And there are lots of people who do that. But the question is, you wouldn't have made it this far in this video if you didn't care about doing giving differently. And there really is an opportunity to take your giving to the next level by raising your own level of consciousness. And one of the ways to do that is to really think critically about how you're interacting with other people. One of the tools that we use is this spectrum of interpersonal dynamics. It sounds very highfalutin, and I'm sure this looks very complex. But the idea here is really pretty simple, that there are different ways we engage with each other. And we have at one extreme violence, right? The use of force, where we're compelling other people. We have in the middle, where we want to be, co-creation, co-ownership, collaboration. And we have kind of a gradation from co-ownership, where you truly own a solution together because you created it together, to commitment, where you persuade someone to do something. And then we have compliance, where you're applying pressure tactics, and then all the way to the use of force, which certainly we don't want to experience that ourselves or be doing that to other people, but it's a reality out in the world. And the idea here is that on either side of the spectrum, on this side, you as the philanthropist are the agent. You're acting on other people. So you're persuading and inspiring. You're engaged in pressure tactics. Hopefully you're not engaged in the use of force, but it's a conceivable possibility. The idea is that when you are doing sense-making philanthropy, you're actually starting all the way over here. You're letting other people persuade and inspire you. So instead of bringing your idea and trying to get other people to be committed to that, you are opening yourself up to being persuaded and inspired to follow someone else who's out in the field, another philanthropist, but ideally even someone out in the field leading from the ground. Another way of asking this is just, are you open to being influenced by other people? It's worth thinking about. Another lens for what I've just been talking about is the idea of levels of consciousness or levels of personal development. So another set of questions to ask yourself is, what is my own level of personal development? And this scale, it really starts down here at the bottom. And this is really a way of thinking about how we meet our needs, those human needs we talked about at the start. The first level, or the lowest level, is infantile, where I'm just focused on meeting my needs no matter what. And I see other people, if I see them at all, simply as vehicles for getting what I need. And this is perfectly functional if you are a baby. It is not functional if you are an adult and a leader. It's infantile. The next stage up would be externally directed, where you're looking to other people for cues and clues about how to behave and how to feel about yourself. And you're asking the question, what will others think of me? And that's a defining question you ask. And if that's a question you ask in your philanthropy, it's fine to consider that. But if that's the driving question that determines what you do, that would suggest you're at this externally directed level. Internally directed is where so many of us lead from so much of the time. And this is like, I have my own story, and I'm trying to enlist other people in that story. That's like when you're operating here, you're trying to persuade and inspire other people on board with your story. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's limiting. And ultimately, these three lower layers, infantile, externally directed, and internally directed, they're all powered by fear. That fear of not being able to meet those egocentric needs for security, for entertainment, for social status, for social connection. So the good news is that, we're all on a journey, and we all have this opportunity to grow. Your personality is not fixed through life. It can grow and evolve. And a lot of what we do with coaching and personal development is all about that process of growth. So the next step up is self-evolving. And this is where you're really getting a critical consciousness about your own psychology. You're saying, how am I wired? And how can I grow into my highest and best self? And then even one level beyond that, where, it's an amazing place to come from as a philanthropist, is where you're seeing not just your own consciousness, but the systems around you. You have a critical consciousness about the systems in which you're embedded. And you're asking questions like, what larger truth, what larger whole is trying to happen through me? And these two levels here, the self-evolving and the self-transcending, are really coming from a place of joy and fulfillment. And so if you can do your philanthropy from these higher levels, so much more impact and joy is possible for you out in the world. And that's really, why I created this website, why I'm sharing all this material, is really this idea that we can do philanthropy better by ourselves making some commitments as philanthropists to do the work differently and better. And the first of those commitments is to get visionary, to prioritize visionary social impact above your ego-driven needs. It's easy to say that. It's hard to do that in reality, but it is something you can strive for. The second commitment is to get real, to seek and speak the truth to everyone, including yourself. That's the self-awareness, that pushing to really understand yourself and see the systems that you're part of. Third is getting together. It's treating others with consideration and not contempt. Going back to that spectrum of interpersonal dynamics, it's treating people in a collaborative way and being open to being influenced yourself and persuaded and inspired by other people's ideas, not just trying to enlist them in your own. And then lastly, it's about getting better. It's committing to the daily pursuit of personal growth and joy, really across all the areas of your life, not just your philanthropy. And that's the mission that Joyful Impact is all about. And that's what the website is for. And we really created this website as an adjunct to the work that we do at Building Impact, to just share what we're learning and doing in the coaching and personal development space with our clients and the social entrepreneurs and grantees that we work with. And it's also what I'm doing with this book, as I'm putting this together, trying to share these ideas more broadly and to build, on those titles that I shared at the outset that have made such a trenchant and key critique of philanthropy. What I'm trying to do with this book is say, yes, and here's how we can step up as philanthropists and do this better and have more joy and more impact. So I'd love to hear, if you have thoughts, ideas, stories from your own journey as I'm working on all of this. And I really wish you the best as you pursue your philanthropy and your giving and taking the fear out of that giving and showing up with your very best self and doing your very best work. If you like this video and you want to access the worksheet or any other material that goes with it, just click the link below or head on over to joyfulimpact.co. That's the website where we have all the material we use for working with coaching and personal development for change agents. You can set up a free account in the members area, and you can also check out the blog where we have new content coming out all the time. Why are we putting all this out there for free? Because the world has never been more in need of a new greatest generation of change agents. I hope this material is helpful to you, and if it is, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. That will help us spread the word.